Shabbos today is Sunday. It's Yud Adar Sheni. 10 days in the second Adar. Tomorrow is the 11th day in the second Adar. And I just learned to Siche every Shabbos. I'm saying this as an introduction. You know, it's always to say a Fabrengen word. Every Shabbos they give out, in the Teres Menachem gives out in Hebrew a Fabrengen from the Rebbe. Each week, like he's come about years and years in the Likutei Sichos, they give out each week a kuntris, which is called his svadus. A piece of a fabrengen, depending on the length of the fabrengen. So this Shabbos, yesterday, they gave out from Tovshan Lamed Hey, 1975, 3 sichos from a fabrengen from Shabbos Zocher. And one of those sichos, the Rebbe mentioned the Mishnah. Right, the first Mishnah is a Masechta Megillah begins. The Mishnah Megillah begins with these words: Megillah Nikras ba'achad asa, b'shneim asa, b'shleish asa, ba'aba asa, b'chamish asa, le'pachas v'le'yesa. Which means the Megillah Esther is read on the 11th, the 12th, the 13th, the 14th, and the 15th, not less and not more. That's the Lashon Mishnah. So the first thing that Rebbe does is he brings a Yerushalmi that says that you're allowed to read the Megillah the whole Adar from the first day of Adar. There's a Yerushalmi. The Mishnah, the Yerushalmi is Gemara, right? The Mishnah comes before the Gemara. That brings a Yerushalmi that says that really a whole Adar you can read the Megillah. But the Mishnah says the 11th, the 12th, the 13th, the 14th, and the 15th. So the Rebbe has a simple kash. We all know when you're supposed to read the Megillah. Purim is the 14th of Adar. This year it's on a Thursday. If we would live in Yerushalayim or in Shushan Habira, Susa, whatever the name of the city is, they know where that place is. They would read it on Shushan Purim, which would be the 15th of Adar. The whole business about the 11th and the 12th and the 13th is a dispensation. It's an allowance for people who don't live in a community where they have their own shul. If you live in a city that doesn't have a shul, and you want to get together with a minyan, so you should do it, whatever it is, but whatever the case is. So Mondays and Thursdays they would come in for business, for market days. It's called Yom HaKanisa. So depending on what day of the week it is, you can read the Megillah as early as the 11th. In other words, if Purim is on Sunday, they would come in Thursday before, which is 3 days before, which would be Yud Aleph. So the Rebbe says the Mishnah should say Megillah Nekras b'Yud Aleph b'Tezvav. And if you can't be in shul on Purim, then you can do it from the 11th. Why does it say Megillah Nekras? First of all, ba'achad asa, b'shneim asa, the 11th, the 12th, the 13th. These readings, which none of us do anymore, were a dispensation. They were a heter for people who can't get to shul on Purim. Why is that the beginning of the Mishnah? There is a wonderful answer. It's based, of course, on Chassidus. That the Lashon Mishnah is the Megillah is read on the 11th, the 12th, the 13th, the 14th, the 15th. 11th is Vovkei. The 15th is Yudkei. Right? That's numbers. Vovkei is 11, Yudkei is 15. The Rebbe says, Amalek, Haman, Amalek, is from the word Melika. Melika means to behead, to chop off the head. Which means, Kabbalistically, to separate Yudkei from Vovkei. Melika is a form of Shechita. Separating the head from the body is separating the Yudkei from the Vovkei. And the Rebbe says as follows: Amalek did not mind if your head was okay. He just didn't want your feet to be okay. He didn't mind if in your spirit you were good, as long as down here in this world you were messed up. He wanted to separate the higher part, the Yudkei, from the Vovkei. The Yudkei is the Neshama of Yiddishkeit, and the Vovkei, Vav is Teira, and Hey is Mitzvahs, or however it's explained. So, and that's why, yesterday in Shul we read Zocher, right? We kiyad al case ka melchemes Hashem ba'amalek. The Eibishter swears. Hashem swears. Ein shmi shalom ve'ein kisi shalom. My name is in whole and my throne is in whole. Hashem's name is Yud Kei Vav Kei. He says kiyad al case ka. I'm separating Yud Kei from Vav Kei until I erase Amalek. And case is Chof Samach. It's missing the Aleph. Kisei is Chof Samach Aleph. So the Eibishter puts his hand. He puts his hand, b'shvua, as an oath, on a vow, on his throne and on his name. It's a pasuk in Chumash. This is not a medrash. It's a scriptural passage. Ki yad al keis kol melchemes havaya ba'amalek midei deir. The Eibishter swears that my name is in whole and my throne is in whole until I erase Amalek. Because the inyan of Amalek was to separate Yudkei from Vavkei. So the Rebbe says that's why the Mishnayos and Masechta Megillah starts Megillah Nikras B'Yud Aleph. The first thing you have to know about Megillah Esther is Vav Kei. You got to do it. You have to do it. What about feelings? What about the deeper meanings? That's later. But the most important thing is Megillah, how the Rebbe teaches it. Megillah Nikras B'Yud Aleph. The most important thing you have to know about Megillah Esther is the letters of Hashem's name, which are Vav Kei, which means the letters that associate with the Yiddishkeit of action. The Yiddishkeit of spirituality can be laid. Isn't that a beautiful pshat? That's the pshat in the Mishnah. That's how Masechta Megillah begins. Megillah Nikras B'Yud Aleph. That the most important thing about Purim is you got to do it, and then you'll figure out how to feel it and mean it and experience it subsequent to that, after that. Anyway, welcome to the Tanya Shiur. I'm really happy that you're here, and a bit surprised, honestly. It's cold and it's early. It's a 10 Hazegin in Mitternacht. So we're learning Perikei Tes. We're going to finish chapter 19. Okay, Rabbi Sai, let's go. We're on page 50. Daf Chof Hey Amud Beis. V'hinei Eid Ein Seif Baruch. Now, I hope you have Tanyas. Tanya, page 50. Daf Chof Hey Amud Beis. The Alter Rebbe is talking about Avodah, right? That's what the Tanya is, right? Tanya's not a book of philosophy, it's a book of life. Work, worship. And the message of the Alter Rebbe, the instruction of the Alter Rebbe, is to achieve the madrega of Beinani, right? To achieve the status of Beinani. How do you translate Beinani in plain words, in plain English? Beinani means self-ownership. That's what it means. A Beinani is a human being who owns him or herself. It sounds so simple, but it's so impossible, right? I'm not a slave to chocolate, and I'm not a slave to cake batter, and I'm not a slave to jelly beans, and I'm not a slave to whatever. And we're slaves to so many, to a cell phone. I'm not a slave to a pillow. I'm not a slave to whatever inyonim could enslave us. Right? A Beinani is someone who's in charge. He owns himself. As the Balabayis Iber Zich. He owns himself. There's a minig Yisrael Teiri that after the Ezras Noshim is filled, I come in the Ezras Anoshim. I taught in Beisivka High School 1 year. Now I teach in seminary. So the girls all ran in and took the last seats in the room. And when those seats were filled, Nebuch, that they sit closer to the teacher. There's a couple of seats. I'm none. For Divas Hobnish Kamayre. We're saving it for the senior citizens. Yeah, so the Beinani means simply a person who's a balabayas over himself. It's an awesome thing to contemplate. Mamish. We own ourselves to some extent, we own ourselves enough to get up in the morning and to wash and to get dressed and to go to work and to come home and to cook a meal and to keep the house clean. But there are, of course, degrees in ownership. How much I own and how much I'm a slave, especially in America, in the West, where Baruch Hashem, we're so rich that we have many things to be enslaved to. But a Beinani is enslaved to nothing except to the Eibishter. He completely owns himself. And he can give a reckoning of every minute of every day and every night. He can give a reckoning of every physical thing he possesses and how it's used maximally and constructively and healthily. Wow. Huh? Wow! A mensch. So the Alter Rebbe gives instruction of how to reach that, right? In other words, he writes technique. Alter Rebbe is telling us how a person can, over the course of his or her life, achieve a place where he's a balabais over himself. Very easy to say. Very easy to say. I say it for a living. I say it for panos. I get paid to say this. To do it? No one's paying anybody to do this. Yeah. For them, darf man schwitzen and harmen, right? This is called avodas Hashem. Working on ourselves. And the Alter Rebbe is providing technique towards this end, for a person to reach this Ma'amid Mata, this condition of self-ownership. And there's two basic techniques. There's many specific techniques, but generally there's two. In other words, there's two basic techniques, but within each one of those two, there are sub-forms. The first technique is intellectual, intelligent. Moyach Shalt Alev means the mind rules over the heart. But Moyach Shalta Alev means, on the deeper level, the mind educates the heart, teaches the heart. In the wording of the Alter Rebbe, there's Melucha and Memshala. There are times in my day when I'm a king over myself. That's when I'm teaching my heart. And there are times in my day where I'm not a king over myself, but I'm a dictator over myself. And this is when the mind rules the heart. They're very different between teaching the heart and ruling the heart. But it's an intellectual process. Chapter 18, which we started months and months ago, introduces us to a person who doesn't have the intelligence. He doesn't have the ability to learn. He doesn't have the ability to concentrate. And he doesn't have the sensitivity to arouse, to turn on his heart by using his intellect, his mind. So chapter 18 is the second technique, and it's speaking to a simpler person. To a person who's not on a level where he can use his study and his ability to understand as a medium to self-inspire using intellect. This second technique is called Ava Mesuteres. Translated literally, it means hidden love. Using the force of the hidden love. We're using the force which is inside the neshama as a means, as a tool to become a bala bias over self, to gain mastery over self. This is the technique. In order to explain this technique, which is going to take him 8 chapters, 8 prakim, to explain this technique, the Alter Rebbe does something interesting. He introduces us to Paltiel Yid. Paltiel Yid has a bunch of names. Chochma Shebenefesh, Ava Mesuteres, Yechida, Paltiel Yid, Nekudas Hayadus. Call it what you want. It's the point inside of a Jew whose relationship with Hashem is not learned or earned, it's inherent. We're born with it. Every Yid has a piece of the Eibishter inside of himself, and because of the piece of the Eibishter inside him or herself, we have an infinite loyalty to him. And the Alter Rebbe says, I want to explain Ava Mesuteres to you by asking 4 questions. And the 4 questions were, Sheidish Ahavazu, where it comes from, Inyana, what is it? How do you inherit it? The Alter Rebbe says this hidden love we inherit from the Avos. And the 4th question was, how does this love include also fear?
What was the third?
The 3rd one is, how do we inherit it from the ancestors, from the Avos? And the 4th is, how does it include fear? And he answered 3 of them. 3 of these questions have already been answered. The Alter Rebbe did not answer them in order, even though it says in Pirkei Avos that the siman of a chacham is Eim Rishon Rishon Al-Achrin Achrin. The Alter Rebbe, who was a chacham Mikol Adam, chose to answer them in a different seder. The first question he answered was the 3rd one. How do we inherit from the Avos? And Alter Rebbe gives a very interesting answer. We didn't inherit it from them, they inherited it to us. Meaning, we don't get it because we're their children. God gave them a gift that we should have it. Wealth, a person lives 180 years, and he leaves his estate to his descendants according to Torah, according to halacha. The Rebbe brings that pasuk. The Rogatchover brings that pasuk. According to halacha, inheritance is not property changing hands. In other words, you can make a case that the inheritance tax is illegal according to Torah, because you're taxing a person for inheritance because it went from the property of the parent to the property of the child. According to Jewish law, it didn't change hands. When children inherit parents, they are the parents. That's the criteria of Yerusha. So you get from your ancestors because you are your ancestors. But this is different. It's not that we inherited because we take their place. They were so great that God gave them a gift. Gave them a gift. And the gift that the Eibishter gave them is that 4,000 years after they lived, somebody will see you walking in the street and he will say, there goes a son of Abraham, a daughter of Sarah. Kipshute, which is a remarkable thing. From perspective of history, it's an amazing thing. I told you this when I was a young man. I used to walk by to work and I would hear the guy sitting on the stoop saying, there goes Abraham. A Yid is Abraham, a Ben Avraham. It happened every day. And I didn't realize he was talking about me for a couple of months. Every day I'd pass it. There goes Abraham. A Yid is a Ben Avraham. A guy, a Schwarzer, an African American was sitting on the stoop, apparently unemployed. And I would pass by and say, there goes Abraham. This idea, it's not us. It's Avraham. were descendants of Avraham Avinu. He gave them a gift. And that answers the third of the four questions, how it's an inheritance. And then the Alter Rebbe goes in order, starting from the first question. Sheiresh Avazu, where does this Ava come from? The answer is Chochma Shebenefesh. I'm not going to repeat it all. This is just I'm setting you up for today's class. It leveled in a neshama called Chochma, whatever Chochma means, but Chochma holds Ein Seif. Chochma holds Ein Seif is an oxymoron, Rabbi Yossi. You cannot hold the unholdable. An Ein Seif is unholdable. And yet, the fact is, Chochma is a seat for Ein Seif. Chochma is a seat for Ein Seif. You know why? Because Chochma has the unique ability of holding without hands, of holding without needing to grasp. It holds by surrender, by letting go, which is unique. Only Chochma can do that. It's a tool that allows me access to the Ein Seif because it doesn't try to control it, to use a psychological form. It surrenders to it. So Chochma is a seat for Ein Seif. We all have Chochma. And because we all have Chochma, we all have Ein Seif. And from that Ein Seif comes the Ava Mesoteres. That's Shoyresh Avazu. The root of the idea that a Jew has in his soul, a connection to Hashem which is infinite, is Chochma. Then the body of it, most of the discussion, 3 pages of it, was explaining what Ava Mesoteres is. What is Ava Mesoteres? And he spoke to us about Emunah, and he spoke to us about Mesiras Nefesh. And again, if you were here throughout, we've been learning this a very long time, we discussed that there's an Emunah that comes from reason. There's a Mesiras Nefesh which comes from reason. That is then transcended. We call that Chaya or Mazel in the language of Atat Tetzaveh. And then there is an Emunah, there's a Mesiras Nefesh which has nothing to do with reason whatsoever. It just comes from the instinct of a person. And this is called Yechidah Shebenefesh. And this is Ava Mesoteres. There's a level of faith that a Jew is given naturally, has as an inheritance from the others, through the tool of his Chochma where the Ein Seif rests, where we have a connection to Hashem which has no relationship with reason at all. And we have a capacity, a possibility, for Mesiras Nefesh or Kiddush Hashem from that same level, which even if I'm smart, I don't do the Mesiras Nefesh because of my smarts, I do the Mesiras Nefesh because I have this Pintel Yid. This is called Inyana. What is it? And Alter Rebbe explained it at length by using the mashal of a candle. There's a physical law that says, there's a logical law that says that everything that is wants to be. Just like every living thing that exists has a basic sense of self-preservation. Everything that is wants to be, except for fire. Fire is running away from this world. It wants to go back to its source and it's going to disappear. And you have to hold it. You hold on to it using fuel. When the fuel is exhausted, the fire disappears. And mystically, spiritually, Kabbalistically, fire disappearing doesn't mean it goes away, it stops existing, it goes back to its source, what's called Eish HaYesei, the elemental fire, which is a philosophical idea, it's not a physical idea. And the Eish HaYesei, the elemental fire, isn't fire at all. So the Alter Rebbe says fire has a nature to go back to its source and lose itself at the expense of itself. At the expense of itself. Nevertheless, this is its nature. It wants to give itself away to its source, even though it's going to disappear. And Alter Rebbe said, this mashal illustrates Neir Hashem Nishmas Adam. The candle of God is the Jewish soul. That a neshama, like a fire, doesn't want to exist. It wants to be one with Hashem, even though it's going to be expensive at its own form, at its own existence. This is what she wants by nature, even though it's going to lose its metzias, because this is the nature of the Pintel Yid. So Rabbi Yossi, if you've been following, and I'm talking 20 minutes and 45 seconds, that's an awful long time to get to the point, is the Alter Rebbe, in presenting us with the Ava Mesoteres Beinani, which is not the intellectual Beinani, it's the visualizing Beinani, that's how I teach it. The first Beinani is intellectual Beinani, it's Seichel. The second Beinani is a Beinani using his imagination, his power of visualization, Dimyoy. And the form is called Ava Mesoteres. The Alter Rebbe asked 4 questions and he answered 3 of them. How do you inherit feelings? We didn't inherit, it was inherited to us. It's a gift to the others. Where does it come from? Because we have Chochma, which is a tool can hold Ein Seif. A tool, a vessel, a receptacle that can hold Ein Seif. What is it? It's emunah and mesiras nefesh, which is not only above reason, there is no relatedness to reason at all, whatsoever. Okay, this is all review. Now we're on the last page of Peidik Yites, right? Top of the page. And the Alter Rebbe needs to answer the fourth of the four questions, which is Eich Nichel Bo Gam Dechilu. How does this Ava include Yira? Rabbi say you need to understand. The Alter Rebbe brings it in Tanya later, in Peidik Mem, Peidik Lametes, that a bird can't fly without two wings, right? We all agree a bird can't fly without two wings. One wing is not enough. Needs two. In other words, birds are not rockets, right? They swim, right? If you've ever read the Tanakh, the word that is used to describe angels flying around the world is the same word that is used for swimming in the water. Because it's birds fly as airplanes fly through a medium, right? Airplanes stay aloft, because the air is heavier than the airplane. How could the air be heavier than the airplane? Leave it to engineers, but that's the fact of life. The air underneath the plane holds the airplane up. That's the way it works, right? But in order to do that, you got to have two wings, a right wing and a left wing. It's got to be balanced. Parenthetically, we're coming from Pachas Vayikra, and in Pachas Vayikra you read about the Karbonis. And one of the halachas of the Karbonis is Tamim Yihya L'Ratzon, that a carbon needs to be Tamim, is not allowed to be a Baal Mum, is not allowed to be blemish. There's an interesting halacha, the Rebbe has a Sikha, in the later Sikhas, Pashas Noach, that the Rebbe says that according to Jewish law, a bird doesn't have to be a Tamim. An animal has to be Tamim, to be perfect. If it has a scratch on its eyelid, a rip in its ear, it's possible for a carbon. A bird doesn't have to be a tamim. In other words, the standard for kashrus for a bird is lower. But it's not allowed to be mechus hareivin, it's not allowed to be missing a limb. According to Jewish law, nitlo agapeha ksheira, if a bird has no wings, you clip both wings, you took them off. The bird is considered kosher, it's not considered a treifa. But for a carbon, it's possible. A carbon, the bird has to have two wings. One is not enough to have two wings. How does the Zohar explain wings? So you know this, that the wings represent Ava V'Yira, Iraisa and Dechilu Rechib. You have Teira and Mitzvahs, and you have the wings of Teira and Mitzvahs, Avas Hashem and Yiras Hashem. The Rebbe mentioned this in the Letzte Zeit, that Neir, the Hebrew word Neir, Nun Reish, is 250. What's the cheshbon of Neir of 250? It's 248 plus 2. Which two? Avas Hashem and Yiras Hashem, love of God and fear of God. And the Rebbe observes, Avas Hashem is a mitzvah saseh. It's a positive commandment to love God. Yiras Hashem is a mitzvah saseh. It's a positive commandment to fear God. So there's two Avas Hashem. There's the mitzvah of Avas Hashem, and then there's the Avas Hashem which motivates the mitzvah of Avas Hashem. There's two Yiras Hashems. There's the mitzvah of Yiras Hashem, and the Yiras Hashem which motivates the kiyum mitzvah of Yiras Hashem. And when the Rebbe spoke about Neshek, Neid is Shabbos Kedusha, a person lights Shabbos candles, that Neid is the Amach mitzvahs, the 248 commandments, with Avas Hashem, Yiras Hashem. Now what's the difference between Avas Hashem and Yiras Hashem, which is a mitzvah and motivates a mitzvah? For this you're going to have to learn Tanya at the end of Peidik Mem, the end of chapter 40, and when you understand it, you'll come and tell me what it means, and then I'll also understand it. But for a bird to fly, it needs two wings. And the Zohar explains it. This is brought in Tanya. For a yid to serve Hashem properly, he has to have passion. Can't just do it, you got to feel it. And the passion must involve love and fear. Because love and fear are different. Love and fear are different. Why? What's the difference between love and fear? I can give you 5 different answers, but this is the one I'm giving you this morning. The root of fear is bittul. The root of fear is bittul. The root of love is ego, right? Self-love. That's how it comes out in Chassidus. That the difference between love and fear, love is a motivator that has a selfishness to it, and fear is a motivator that has a selflessness to it. So what's the difference? One is truer, and one is easier. One is truer, and one is more meaningful. You got to have both. You have to have a motivation in serving Hashem which has an element of self. And you have to have a motivation serving Hashem which has an element of truth. And that's one way of explaining the difference between Av and Yira, love and fear. Now the rule is that they're different emotions. Love and fear are very different. And if you know people, you know that it's personality types, right? There are Jews, right? Forgive me for saying something which is racial. Sfardim are very passionate. They're very, very, very passionate. And their passion results most importantly in a pure emunah de Eivishter. If you ever watch Dollars, when Sfardim would come to the Rebbe used to say to them, Ata chotem et Hashem shelcha Sfardi tahor. Sfardim are racist too, not just Ashkenazim. You sign your name Samachtes. Samachtes means Sfardi tahor. There's no Ashkenazi blood. I'm not at all I'm pure Sfardi. Sfardi tahor. So the Rebbe says, you sign your name Sfardi tahor. That means you have to have emunah tahora. That's what the Rebbe says. You can see it by Dollars. Avner Shaki, the Rebbe tells him that you sign your name Sfardi tahor, so you have to have emunah tahora. The Sfardim have an incredible maila. They didn't go through, the Rebbe once explained this in the Sikha, the Choshech HaGols that we went through, the apocursis of the Western world. Until now, Sfardim were spared that. So when it comes to emunah, when it comes to the idea of Yiddishkeit, which is exciting, they have an incredible maila over Ashkenazim. Incredible maila over Ashkenazim. But Yira is a different midah. Yira means mitzvahs have to be done exactly, precisely. And Yira means that when the Eibusha says no, how I feel doesn't matter. I can't do it. Punished. If you're a Russian, yeah, you're good at Yira. You're not good at Ava. You're good at hating yourself. You're not good at loving yourself. On some level, it's a personality type. But the truth is, every Sfadi needs Yira and every Rosh needs Ava. Needs a little joy. It's the way it works. You need to have both midas. I'm sorry if I insulted you, and I'm sure I'm wrong, and it's racist, and it's judgmental, and it's stereotyping. It's all the midas, rois, haksuvis, in the Sforim that tell you how you're supposed to not judge anybody. But you get the point. Yeah? You have to have Ava and Yira. And they're very different. The joy of Yiddishkeit and the truth of Yiddishkeit come from very different places in us. Some of us have more of a chush in the joy of Yiddishkeit, which we're going to call love. Some of us have more of a chush in the truth of Yiddishkeit, which is called fear. But one without the other doesn't work. A bird with one wing can't fly. A person who's very precise in Kiyam HaMitzvahs, but doesn't have any joy in Kiyam HaMitzvahs, is going to be bitter. And after bitter is going to be sad. And after sad is going to be apathetic. And after apathetic he's going to be gleichgültig. What's gleichgültig in English? Apathetic, indifferent. Worse than indifferent, I don't care. Like it says in the first pages of the first lines of Tanya. On the other hand, the person only has love and joy, so they love Yiddishkeit, but they love themselves also. At some point, Yiddishkeit and they are going to clash. And the Rebbe says in Tanya, chapter 16, I still like myself more than I like God. That's human nature. So the bird needs two wings to fly. It's a fact of life. And they're very different. In the human experience, they're very different. Or to say what I'm saying in other words, it has a rule, it says in Teheles, Lakel Eis's man, everything has a time. I mean, you can't do everything at once. Everything has a time. Eis, I know the Kehelis doesn't say it this way. Eis le'ehoi ve'eis lira. He says eis lisnai, right? There's a time to love and time to fear. In Avodas Hashem, there's a time where the focus of our avodah is love and joy. And Avodas Hashem, there's a time that the focus of our avodah is fear and precision, exactitude, Yiras Hashem. There's a time for each. There's a Simchas Torah and there's a Yom Kippur. They're very different. And they're different midas, but a person needs both wings in order to fly. So the Alter Rebbe has a question. A really good one. We're talking about Pinta Yid, and we call it Ahava. Ahava means a want, a love for God, which is infinite, that's mustered, that's covered over, that emerges in special moments. Alter Rebbe is going to give us a whole formula of how to harness that hidden power on a day-to-day way. That's the whole point. This hidden power comes out at rare moments of Mesiras Nefesh, moments of Tshuva. The Alter Rebbe is going to give us the technique to harness this power in a regular, ordinary life, in a regular day-to-day life, we should have a way of accessing this power. So the Alter Rebbe says, but you can't live on love alone. You have to have fear. And he therefore says the question, how does loving Hashem so passionately, so deeply, so infinitely, that has no relationship with my mind at all, result in me also having fear, which means a tendency towards truth? This is the question. And the answer is going to be, I'm telling it to you up front, the answer is going to be that on the level of Yechidah, the love and fear are not separate. In other words, the reason you need two wings is because the wings do very different things. One wing, in other words, to use fancy schmancy, you'll say, Avram is a tennis. It's not an airplane or a bird, it's a rocket. It's a whole different kind of trajectory, it's a whole different way of moving. It's not using the medium through which it moves. It's overpowering the medium through which it moves. The reason you need to have both love and fear, because they're very different emotions. Love is a selfish emotion, and fear is an emotion that has to do with truth. When you reach Yechidah, love isn't selfish either. On the level of the Pintel Yid, where you literally put God before yourself, the love doesn't have a self. It's not as love normally is. This love is selfless. And therefore, on this level, the love and the fear become one. I'm going to repeat myself a second time, okay? This is what I do as a teacher. I have a regular critic of my life. He says, Yossi, you have to stop repeating yourself. Well, so far I'm not listening. I think this is what teachers do. They repeat. Someone said the same thing exact twice. I do it with the girls and the boys. Because they heard it and then they hear it, or they didn't hear it and then they wake up. But depending on their attentiveness, if you hear it a second time, it adds a certain ability to take it. Love and fear are two wings because they're very, very different until you reach Yechidah. Until you reach that place where your ego has been supplanted by the divine ego, by the Eibishter. On the level of Yechidah, love isn't selfish either. Love is sacrificial. Love is giving yourself away to the Eibishter because it's my nature. I can't even explain it to myself. And therefore here, the typical separation between love and fear, which makes them two separate wings, two separate emotions, and each one has its own time, breaks down. So the question was, how is loving God going to help me fear God? And the answer is that on this level they're the same. Now you'll talk, and then after you'll talk, we'll read. Okay? Questions or comments?
This concept, I also have this thing thrown out, but to truly love yourself, or truly love Hashem, is to truly love yourself something that's important in Chassidus? And if yeah, is it correlated with loving Hashem? And how do you do that?
How do you do that? All the questions I can answer except the last one, which is the one you want me to answer. You cannot serve Hashem unless you're a person. You're not a person unless you're healthy. And you're not healthy unless you love yourself. Self-love is not a part of Tanya, it's a part of psychology. But correct, it's healthy. A person is supposed to like himself. He's not supposed to spoil himself, but he's supposed to like. A person who hates himself can't do anything. But it's not avodas Hashem; it's before avodas Hashem. It's in Tanya. It's assumed. The idea of a person hating himself is not even entertained in the Tanya. There's a basic presumption that a person likes himself. A person likes himself so much he can't get out of his own way. The Tanya gives you instruction that's so based on self-love that if you, chas v'shalom, suffer with a lack of self-love, the Tanya just crushes you. It doesn't speak to you. Because the Tanya doesn't speak to mental health. It speaks to religious health. It teaches how to serve Hashem. So there's no question that a person cannot accomplish anything. I mean, the truth is it says in Teirei. In my mother of Taka Purim, Teirei Gil Sester. And it's originally a Gemara. That the Gemara says Kol Talmud Chacham she'ein le shminis shebeshminis ein Talmud Chacham, which means a Talmud Chacham who doesn't have gaiva is not a Talmud Chacham. Gaiva, what's gaiva? It's a good meter, it's a bad meter. It's a necessary meter. And when I talked about this the last time, I remember I told you it is a special letter from the Rebbe. I think it's so special. But we have so much that we don't notice what we have because we have so much of it. The Rebbe, our Rebbe, was around 30 years old. And he wrote a letter to his two mentors, his father and his Rebbe. And he asked both of them the same question. What is the meaning of this Gemara that if you have no gaiva, you can't be a Talmud Chacham? Isn't that sweet? Did you even know that I told it to you before. So the Rebbe's father wrote the Rebbe a long expose explaining it. And the Friedrich Rebbe answers the Rebbe, Kisheni pogesh nedaber ponim el ponim. The Rebbe didn't want to put it in writing. When we'll meet, we'll talk face to face, which is also such a sweet. This is an English Kaidish. You can buy it in the bookstore. It's not a special collection from the Spitz Chassid. This is a published sefer anybody could read. The Rebbe asked this question to the Rebbe de Shved, to the Friedrich Rebbe, and to his father, and his father answered him. And the Rebbe said, "We'll talk face to face." So that's an example in Gemara, and it's brought in Teidal. The Rebbe says in Teidal, why? You cannot learn if you don't have gaiva. Now, there is a level of a person who has zero gaiva, but there is no way to get to that without first having the gaiva. That's what the Alter Rebbe says. It's impossible. Kol Talmud Chacham she'ein shminis shminis Talmud Chacham. The Alter Rebbe says a person eventually is expected to go past that, but you can't skip that step. It's impossible. So there's a source in Torah for the argument, for the point that you're making. But Avodas Hashem is about serving God. The highest level of serving God is forgetting about yourself. You cannot get to that first. You have to first be in yourself and like yourself. And only then can you possibly exceed it and go to a higher place. Now, how to achieve that? The only thing I can tell you is we're all in the same boat.
Would you say like yourself or love yourself?
I think you have to have both. I think you have to have both. You know, if you go to counseling, they tell you it's not enough to love your wife, you have to actually like her. It's not enough to love your husband, act like you like him. But I love him, but I can't stand him. Yeah. So in your relationship with yourself, there's love and like. What's the difference? Love is unconditional. Like means actually like the person you are. You have strengths and you have weaknesses, like that. And in a way, like is harder than love. You got to have both. But enough psychology for the morning, yeah? Okay. Anyway, any other questions or comments? So let's read, okay? And I told you what we're going to read. That normally, love and fear are very different emotions. In terms of Avodas Hashem, they're very different emotions. And you must have both separately. Like I know there is no such pasuk, but fine. Here the Alter Rebbe says, what about Ava Mesoteres? We call it Ava. Where is the Yida and Ava Mesoteres? And the answer is that when a person loves on a level of Yechida, the Ava and the Yida converge. They're the same. Because the very definition of this love is forgetting about self. Let's read it. V'hine Ein ad Hashem ein seif baruch. The light of Ein Seif, Hamelubish b'chochma shebenefesh, which sits in the chochma. Now, girls, you'll recognize this line because I articulated this line in my introduction, right? Remember, the second question was Sheidish Avazu, and what was the answer? That you have chochma, and in the chochma the Ein Seif rests, because only chochma can hold Ein Seif. But the fact is, we have Ein Seif in our chochma, and because of this combination, we have this love to Hashem, which is called Ava Mesoteres. Says the Rebbe the following: Gadol v'atzum keiche. Its strength is great and intense. Kol kach, to such an extent. Legaresh, to divorce. V'litches, and to push out. Hasitra achara v'aklipis, all that's not good. Shelo yuchlu yigu, they should not be able to touch. Afilu bilevushav, even the periphery of the person, namely the garments of the person. What are the garments of the person? Shei machshava, dibur, u'maisa, which is thought, speech, and deed. Shalamunas of the Shem Echad, of the belief in one God. Meaning that when this Ava Mesoteres emerges, the degree of precision, of exactness, of devoutness that a person expresses in his relationship with Hashem and in his refusal to become separated from Him to such a degree, la'amed ben Esayin, to withstand the test, lim say nafshe chas v'sholom, to give one's life, afilu, even if what's expected of him is shalei it's not to do rak eze ma'aseh lavad, some action alone, neged emunas Hashem echad, which goes against Achdas Hashem. Kigain, for example, lehishtachave la'avodah zarah, to bow down to an idol. Av she'einei maimin ba b'klal b'libei, he doesn't believe it at all. Or as they say in American, he's crossing his fingers while he's doing it. You won't even bow down to the idol when you know, and the person who's forcing you to knows that you don't believe it one drop. The whole thing of the show. You won't even do that. V'chein, similarly, the power of Ava Mesoteres is such that it has the power to be exact enough, shalei ledaber te'ech chas v'sholom, not to speak against, God forbid, al Achdas Hashem, the unity of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, av she'ein pi v'libei shavin, you don't even mean it, it's just words, you're saying words to save your life. Rak libei sholem emunas havaya, one's heart is loyal in his belief in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Right? I once was on Merkish Lichas and a guy gave me such a hard time about this. Whatever his issue was, but really you're going to die for this? How terrible is it? The Alter Rebbe says, there's a Gemara, which is really, really upsetting. Right? We quote the Gemara of Chana and her 7 sons, but the Gemara doesn't say their name is Chana. The Chana says in Chazal, Midrash, but not in the Gemara. The Gemara says it was a woman who was called into a Roman king. She had 7 boys. They were all before Bar Mitzvah, they were boys. And he made them worship idols. So the oldest was called in and said, you have to bow down to this idol, whatever it was that he wanted him to do, some kind of a ritual, some kind of a service. And the boy refused and he quoted one pasuk. So the king killed him in front of his mother. Then he called in a second boy. And he told him to do the same. And he quoted a second pasuk. Each one quoted a different pasuk in Chumash, which speaks about the Israel of Avodah Zarah, and he killed him also. Until they got to the youngest. Now, if the oldest was before Bar Mitzvah, how old was the youngest? He was a 5-year-old, a pitzaleh, a little boy. Now imagine you're a king, and your room is full of officers, and you just murdered in cold blood, little children. Why? Because they defied him. They defied him. They told him, gave, Yishakedim and Yishikas Piyu, gave Pfeifim. They defied the king. They told the king no. And the king felt stupid. He just killed 6 children, children, kindalach, because they told him, we're not afraid of you. So the king, in desperation, took off his ring and threw it on the floor and says to the 5-year-old, can you give me my ring? Now everybody in the room knew that this king looked like a fool. He just killed 5-6 children because they defied him. I mean, killing Bechlal is a bad midah, right? We're learning that pretty good in the last couple of weeks. Killing children in cold blood, it's unimaginable. And particularly because they defied him. So he throws his ring on the floor and says to the boy, pick it up, and the kid refuses. And he kills him also. And then the Gemara, whatever the end of the story is, the Gemara finishes with the pasuk, Eim avonim smecha, that the mother of the children are in Gan Eden. That's how the Gemara finishes. It's a tragic story in the Gemara. It's a story in the Gemara. But what did the king want from these kids? They should do something. What did the king want? They should say something, right? He knows what's in their heart. He knows how they feel. The answer is, of course, he does. Yeah, they don't believe this at all. They think this is hocus pocus. So you do a meaningless act and save your life and live another day. So the Alter Rebbe says the power of Ava Mesoteres is such that you will not, you will not allow the tumah of Avodah to touch the edge of your periphery. People have given their lives not to give lip service to Avodah Zarah. Which means that this is such a powerful love that it exceeds self. Self would always say self-preservation, right? What's self's last name, yeah? Okay, in America we say self-love, but most of history was self-preservation. And here, the Ava Mesoteres exceeds even that. So now go back to your text and read. It says the Rebbe v'zeh nikra, this is called the Chila hanichlal b'rechibu. Fear which is included with love. Let's translate. Normally, fear and love are two different things, because they're really opposite. The center of love is self, and the center of fear is God. The center of love is Yeshus, and love of self, and the center of Yira is Bittel, as steht in Chassidus. Here, the love results in a precision. If you remember the last year I gave you, which was last Sunday, I pointed out that when the Alter Rebbe says that a Jew who's completely secular, when his Yechidah Shebenefesh is woken up, he doesn't just keep Shabbos and kosher, mikveh and film. He becomes particular about Koisei Shal Yud. There's no detail in Judaism which is not important to him, because the love is so strong that automatically there's a precision in every detail of Yiddishkeit, and that's part of the fear emotion. So the Alter Rebbe is saying normally it would be a good question. Love alone is not enough. I need fear along with it. And the Alter Rebbe says, but not here. This love is so powerful. It involves so much of sacrifice of self that it automatically has Yira in it. I'll read it one more time. This is called the Chilo HaNichal B'Rechibu, that in the love there's automatically fear. Shehi, because this is Ava Hativis, it's a natural love. Now, as I explained to you in earlier classes, in Hasidus and in Tanya, there's two ways to use the word nature. The first is that nature means limitation. Nature is a substitute for the word klipa. A limitation, the way God designed me, with my limits. But in this Pedic, the word nature means something that's inexplicable. You can't explain it. It has no explanation. It defies explanation. So the Alter Rebbe says, Ava Hativis, we're talking about a love which is called natural, but the meaning of the word nature in this case is not a limitation. It absolutely goes beyond anything you could explain. Shebenefesh alakis, which is in the divine soul, Shebeklolos Yisrael, which is in the collective Jew. Now, I say this every time. You will see a pattern in the entire Tanya, as far as I know, without an exception. Any time the Alter Rebbe talks about Pintel Yid, he includes us in the community of Jews. Shebeklolos Yisrael. See those words? As a member of the Jewish people. He never, I don't even think once, it comes up a number of times in Tanya. Whenever he talks about a love on a level of Yechidah, he includes us in the community. The idea that a Yid has a Pintel Yid is a member of the family of Jewish people. That's the meaning of these two words. Shebeklolos Yisrael, which is a part of the collective Jew. And to say it in real terms, I may be what I am with my malice and my chesrenis, but as a member of the Klal Yisrael, the Klal is perfect, and therefore, and as much as we're parts of that Klal, we're perfect as well. And this is where this love comes from. Shechavtza v'retzeina, its desire and its want. And here you have the word again, betiva, by its nature. And again, nature in this Pedic doesn't mean limitation. Nature means in this Pedic means that you cannot possibly explain it. Lidovik, to cleave, to attach itself, b'shorsho makeda, to its root and its source, which is ein seif baruch hu, which is godliness. Shemipnei ahavazu v'ratzon. This love and this will is so strong that automatically underlined, it's not a separate emotion, it's part of the same emotion. He's awed, she is awed and frightened by nature. Notice we had the word teva 3 times. Right? Teva, again and again and again and again. In this case, teva means something you cannot explain. From touching the breg, the edge, the tip of the tomb of Avodah Zarah, because it defies the belief in one God, or the oneness of God. Even if she is doing it only in her external components, which is dibur, to say words, or maisa, to do a deed, You don't believe it. The person who's coercing you knows you don't believe it. Everybody knows that it's a show, and you won't do it. So the Alter Rebbe says, in this case, on this level, Av and Yid are not two, they're one and the same. The love of Hashem automatically includes the fear of being separated from Him. And this, Rabbi Yossi, is the answer to the fourth question. We had 4 questions. I'll say them in the order in which the Rebbe addressed them. How do we inherit from the others? The answer is, it's not us, it's them. Where does it come from? The answer is in Yana, what is it? It's an emunah, it's a mesiras nefesh, which is not connected to reason, even indirectly, like the fire that must go back to its source and lose its metzias. And how does it include fear? The answer is that on this level, they're not two emotions. The idea that love is self-centered and that fear is bittul-based breaks down on the level of the Yechida. On the level of the Yechida, they're one and the same. Okay, questions or comments? Go ahead, but talk loud. Now go ahead.
2 questions. Number 1, you said that, I think you said that you're going to maybe explain how you could access this in, like, on a regular situation.
The Alter Rebbe is going to spend 6 prakim,
So we're
which means like you'll be married with a baby in Mitzvah Hashem Gesundheit. Ve'ezer Hashem is Baruch v'Yisale. Okay, we'll let you bring him, huh?
We don't feel this usually, right? Meaning we have it, we can access it, but we don't feel these feelings usually.
Right. I think an Amunah maybe, yeah. The idea that we have a connection to Hashem is pretty regular. But the Alter Rebbe's whole point is that you're going to use it as a tool of self-control.
This is going to take 6 chapters.
That takes 6 prakim, yeah.
The other question was, in the beginning you said that there are 2 ways to get self-ownership.
Right.
Intellect, like ruling the heart, or through accessing this intellect.
Right, but the second method is through visualization.
Okay.
Through picturing.
Are we supposed to choose one method, or do we use both?
You're supposed to do only one thing. Only in B'chlal in life, if you do only one thing, don't lie to yourself. Be honest about where you're holding. And all these questions get self-answered.
The more attainable one for this generation.
First of all, yes. Second of all, I think we got a third one. Just be besimcha and act. Do. Now, how does that work? If you're not reaching the Madrega Benyan, either you're not happy enough or you're not busy enough. It's a whole new... the Rebbe. But if we're honest with ourselves, the Eibishter will help. And one of the hardest things about this self-honesty is you can't wish you were somebody else. We all wish we were bit Chabadski Chassidim. We all wish we had great minds and great hearts and lots of time and no employment, by the way. To be a Chabad Chassid, besides for the natural gift, you also need to be a person who lives in a shtetl where the speed of the community is 3 miles an hour. That if you come to work 4 hours late, no one's even going to notice, So you davened. I showed up at 2. I just finished davening. Oh, thank you for coming. Imagine showing up in the matzah bakery at 8:31 in the morning. Not 8:31. Yeah, now show up 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I was davening. Oh, kumaran, yeah. Nemaval get holtz. Okay, we're going to take a break and then we're going to do a yem yem. Thank you for coming. Go ahead. You want to say something? But talk loud.
Yes. This is a story that happened to us. I think it illustrates this thing, and I feel like we can't keep it to us because it was exactly that illustration. 30 seconds. There's a teenager in our community that had a teenage baby, and her parents didn't want to help her mal him, and she for sure didn't want. So her friend, another teenage girl, had also a baby. Her parents were making a bris milah. They brought a mile from here, and it's in the Chabad house. And the shliach, my husband, is trying to convince the friend to have a bris milah, a 9-month-old baby. They're good friends. One is having a bris milah, the other doesn't want to hear about it. So he's taking her for a walk, they're smoking, they're talking, they're laughing, and she's not going to hear it. By us, they speak Hebrew. The Miles is an American. So he finally tells my husband, and she hears. She goes, "Where's the Arel? Where is the Arel baby?" She said, "You called my baby Arel? You right now make a bris milah."
Very good.
Nothing helped.
Very good.
But that helped.
Okay, Ashikayach. Okay, very good. Good. Okay, good morning. We're going to do a yem yem in a minute. Thank you for that.